instead of saying submission, another word was to be subject to, which is also under the authority of. So kind of keep that in mind. I also wanted to say, if you are single, like Matt said, don't disregard what I'm saying. You probably know someone that's married or going to get married, or you might get married. But also think about your spouse as God in this context. You know, whatever I say that you should be doing in your relationship, if you don't have a significant other, then do that in your relationship with God. He's your spouse, I'll say that. So, what the Bible says about the wife's role. The first one, and Matt kind of touched on this already a little bit, is that it is a reciprocal thing. It is a give and take. We are to submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. And I'm just going to say this real quick because I do want to talk about the wife's role, not necessarily the submission to each other, but we are a team and we're united. And when we get married, we're to be that team. Where my strengths are, Matt may be weak and vice versa. So we want to play on those and really be a strong couple if we focus on those things. If we are unselfish, then we're not always in that game of finger pointing and blaming. And when we do that, we get in a role of playing the victim. And it's very hard to be submissive to our spouse when we feel like we're always being wronged and that they're the ones that are doing everything wrong. So it is a reciprocal thing. We have to give and take and not be unselfish. A long time ago, we were watching According to Jim. Has anybody seen that? And I think that was the show. There was an episode where Jim Belushi was talking to his brother or brother-in-law about the love bank and how he was going to make deposits into his wife's love bank. That way, when he needed something, he needed to go on a golfing trip or something, he could make a withdrawal and get what he wanted. While his intentions were not good in that certain situation, the premise is still kind of true. You're going to get what you give. And we have to think about negativity. If we're giving negativity, we're going to get negativity. If I'm constantly nagging on Matt to go do this or stop doing that, then that is going to affect our relationship. And so we need to remember that. So what goes around comes around. And the next thing is that we want to put our husbands first. Whenever we are seeking guidance or comfort or anything like that, he says, wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands as you do the Lord, for the husband is the head of the wife. I think a lot of us women have a bad tendency to call our mom and be like, oh my gosh, I have this problem, let me tell you what's going on, or our sister, or our best friend, and we forget that our husband may be the one that wants to be there with us, going through that with us, and we're supposed to go to him first. It's no wonder so many men hate their in-laws. You know, we're like always pulling him into our family. And it's kind of true with us too. We see my family way more than we see Matt's family. And that's not because I don't love Matt's family. Part of it has to do with the distance. But a lot of men don't see their families as much as the women's, because the women's kind of like, all right, I'm taking over. You're joining my family. I'm not joining yours. But we need to join our husband first. That doesn't just include maybe other people that we're calling or looking for support. It could be our jobs that we're putting first. It could be money, social things, you know, going out and shopping or things like that. I think also about our kids. We get married a couple years down the road, or maybe 9 months down the road. You have a child and another child, and then suddenly it's all about the kids. And the next thing you know, you're running a band and soccer and football and choir and guitar or whatever else, and it's not about the couple anymore. And it's like people get so lost, and it's always about the kids. And then the kids move out, and you have empty nest syndrome, and the couples are like, ugh, what do we do now? We don't have the kids anymore, and we've lost sight of each other. I don't know what your hobbies are anymore. We've changed. Life has gone on, and we need to stay connected and stay to our husbands first. The next is, and Matt talked a little bit about this, I think, but in everything. Verse 24, now as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything. This is hard, because we think we're right, and we're not. Sometimes we are, but not all the time. In this picture, we have the woman who's, you can't tell probably, but she's on the phone. And the car's broke down, and the man's looking at it, in my opinion, like he don't know what to do. And she's already on the phone calling for help. And let's let him take care of it. Let's let him take the time to fix the problem and figure out what to do instead of trying to be a fix-it. I'm a fix-it person. Matt gets irritated with me all the time because the minute something goes wrong, I'm trying to figure out how to fix it and call people and get help, and he's like, let's talk about it. Let's think about it. Pull yourself back a little bit. So we need to go to him in everything. And I know the guys are probably thinking, really? You're going to ask me what color you want the curtains to be? Like, do I really care what color we paint the wall or how much the toilet paper is? Probably not. So sometimes we got to remind ourselves that maybe they don't care about that and let them have some time for quiet or whatever. I didn't hear that one.
I said I care about the whole
The last thing that I'm going to spend the most amount of time is on the respect, because I know that respect is very important to the man. Women don't always quite get that. We think like, oh, we love him and we tell him we love him, but do we tell him we're proud of him and that we trust him? And that is, from what I hear, pretty vital. I was going to say that when Matt was doing his part, God says, man, love your woman. He doesn't say respect your woman. And he doesn't tell the women, love your husband. He says, respect the husband. And it's just the differences in the way that our minds are that God knew even way back then. And it's still true today that we have to focus on that. I'm going to put a plug in for this book, For Women Only. Anybody ever heard of it? This is supposed to tell us women what's going on in the inner lives of men. So it's about guys, so that we can figure out what y'all are about. There is one called For Men Only that'll tell you guys what we're all about. I want to read it because I don't know what's going on up here. But this is interesting. There's a whole chapter devoted to respect in this book. And they did a survey. And in the survey question it says, if you were forced to choose one, which would you prefer? Would you rather feel alone and unloved, or inadequate and disrespected? And of course the women in the survey was like, who would want to feel unloved? Well, the men actually said, we don't want to feel inadequate and disrespected. To them, actually one of the guys said that they had trouble with that question because they didn't feel that the choices were different. And that it says, if a man feels disrespected, he is going to feel unloved. So if you want your man to love you in the way he needs to be loved, then you need to ensure that he feels your respect most of all. And it says more than 80% of men, 4 out of 5, said that in a conflict they were likely to be feeling disrespected, whereas we girls are far more likely to be wailing, he doesn't love me. So, when it comes to respect, there are different areas we need to respect. One is his judgment. We need to trust that the man knows what he's doing. And like I said, this is hard because we think that we're right. Sometimes if we let the man go figure it out, he'll figure it out and he'll come back and say, okay, this is what I figured out, let's do this. A lot of men feel more valued and respected in their workplaces and with their buddies than they do by their wives. And that's pretty sad because we should be the ones that are respecting them the most. We don't want to get naggy and bossy. Next, we want to respect his abilities. They do want to figure things out on their own. Matt will maybe be talking about something and I want to come in with the solutions. And he's like, I didn't ask for a solution, let me figure it out. Just sit there and, you know, when I'm ready to have your help, I will ask you for your help. Respect and communication. Making side comments like, well, you're just not that handy. You know, let me call someone else to take care of it. While we think it's harmless, can be very disrespectful to the man. And by the way, guys, if you disagree with anything I'm saying, please let me know, because I'm not a guy, and I don't know. Also, sometimes if we have chores that we want our guys to do, and we're like, you know what, the light bulb really needs changed, and I can't reach that high. And we're constantly asking, have you changed the light bulb, have you changed the light bulb, have you changed the light bulb? Could be misinterpreted, even though we don't mean it this way, as saying, I don't trust that you're going to do it, or I think you're being lazy and you just haven't gotten around to it yet. So we need to be careful in terms of that. And we need to be respectful in public. Making side jokes in a group of our friends, while it may seem harmless, can be very disrespectful, and then the other guys around the room may view your man as maybe not having control, or, they might feel sorry for him or whatever. And while all this information is good and all, there are barriers to doing this, because sometimes it's very hard to be submissive and respectful and all of those things. So I'm going to go over quickly barriers. I think one is cultural diversity. It's difficult to know in a marriage how you're going to maybe raise your kids or where you're going to go to church or things like that if you're culturally different. So that can be a big barrier, I think. Another one is feminism. Like Matt said, women are climbing the ladders, and it gives us a sense of power and control, and we think that we're equal with men, and we're not. And we need to remember that. I think also how many women are raising children alone, and our little girls are raised by women and taught to be, powerful and, doing things on their own. So our little girls also are coming up in this generation where they're not taught that guys are supposed to be the head, and we need to think about that as well. We're not equals, and Matt already said if the guy doesn't feel respected and you're like all the time over him, he may go find someone else that's going to make him feel that way. Another one is pride and strong will. I'm very independent. I like to do things. I like to fix things. In fact, the other day I walked outside and I had a flat tire, and I did try to start changing it by myself.
And what did you discover?
I couldn't do it. I could not get the lug nuts off, and I thought it's a good thing I'm not on the side of the highway because I would be in big trouble. But we need to let our guys take care of us. Matt gets so frustrated with me because my mom taught us to take care of ourselves. And so when I'm trying to fix stuff, he's like, can't you just let me be the man? I remember putting a closet together whenever he wasn't even born yet, and I was putting shelves in the closet, and he came home from work and it was done. He was like, you didn't give me the opportunity to do it. You just did it. And we take away from them. The next is bitterness. It's really hard to be submissive when you're angry and unforgiving. And this goes both ways in the relationship. If we're harboring resentment and we can't let things go, then it's going to be very difficult to say, okay, honey, what do you want? What do you think should happen? We have to have forgiveness in order to move on and build the relationship up. The one I think is the hardest is having an ungodly husband. It's really difficult to submit to somebody that you think is not living right. Why am I going to follow you if I don't think that you're doing the right thing? That's what I think in my head. And I think that is very difficult, when we think somebody needs to be worthy of our submission. But I think also we go back to it being a reciprocal thing. I'm not worthy of it either. And, I'm not perfect, and I have to remember that. So I don't want to just go over all this information to be like, well, now what? I can't fix the problem. I can't make my husband do this, and I can't do this. So really quick, just some things to help out, some solutions. One, prayer. Prayer needs to be constant and consistent and should be with your spouse. You should find time to pray together to build each other up. But God can change an ungodly attitude, and He can also work on us to have a good attitude while changes are being made. Communication. Choose good timing. Talk about expectations, things you want in the marriage, things that are hurting the relationship. We need to listen to our man without getting all upset and our feelings hurt. And men, please don't feel like we're disrespecting you and get all upset. Seek professional help if needed. The last one is obviously forgiveness. It's pretty self-explanatory. Like I said, you can't do a lot of these things if you're very upset and always focusing on the negative things. Try to think about the positive things that your mate or spouse has done. Don't keep a record of wrongdoing. So that is my version very quickly of what the Bible says about women. I think you have something to end with? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you, Rebecca. Very well done. As we wrap up, I would welcome if anybody has any comments or questions or thoughts.
Can I read the entire passage of verse 9?
By all means, brother.